Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid by Jeff Kinney, Willie Jefferson's Journal. The time me and Greg had a 2-night sleepover. Okay, you already know this from the title of the chapter, but this one time me and Greg had a 2-night sleepover. And I bet you think we had a total blast and you want to read about all the wacky stuff we did. But guess what? It was not that fun at all. The reason this sleepover happened was because my nana got sick and me and my parents were gonna go visit her. But then Mrs. Happily said, when my mom said okay to that idea, then why don't you two go and we'll watch Raleigh for the weekend? Then when my mom said okay to that idea, me and Greg were hyped because we never had a 2-night sleepover before. But I guess we should wait until later to celebrate it because of the whole Nana thing. On Friday, my mom packed my bag for the weekend and just put in an extra pair of underwear just in case. Plus, she packed a little over and picture of her and my dad, so I could look at if I missed them too much while they were gone. Like I said before, the sleepover wasn't a lot of fun, but it started off pretty good. We played video games in Greg's basement and ate snacks. Then we prank called Scotty Douglas, and he blew the whistle he keeps right by his phone for when we do that. Excuse me, sir. Your refrigerator is running, so maybe you should go catch it. Whee! But then Mrs. Douglas called Mrs. Happily to tell us on for prank called Scotty. Then Mrs. Happily told us we're bullying, and that made me feel ashamed. At 9 p.m., Mrs. Happily said it was time for bed, and she went back upstairs. I was pretty tired, but Greg said he had an idea. There's this kid on our street named Joseph O'Rourke who has a trampoline, but he never lets anyone use it. Greg said we should sneak out and jump up on the trampoline while Joe was asleep. Oh, I wasn't so crazy about this. About this sneaking out idea. But Greg said it was going to be okay. I was going to be a baby. I should go up to Manny's room and sleep in there. I said I wasn't a baby, and he said, yaha, and I said, nuh-uh. Then he said, yaha times infinity, but I wasn't ready for that. And I said, nuh-uh times infinity squared. And I thought I had Greg Greg beat with that one. But he got me anyway when he said Yaha times infinity squared plus 1. Damn. So we snuck out the back door and I followed Greg up to Joe's. It was really cold outside and all I had on were my pajamas. My jammies. I had on were my jammies. But I didn't want to complain because then Greg might call me a baby again. Next. Sure enough, all the lights at the Rose house were off. So this was our big chance to use Joe's trampoline. Greg said we couldn't make any noise and then he climbed up and did a bunch of jumps, but he was real quiet. Then it was my turn. This was my first time on a trampoline, and it was really fun. And I guess that's why I forgot we were being sneaky. The lights came on inside the Rose house, and their dog started barking, and Greg took off without me. I wanted to run too, but it's not so easy to stop bouncing when you're on a trampoline. Bark, bark, bark. Once I finally stopped, I ran to the Hapley's house and went around back to the basement door. But I guess Greg wanted to teach me a lesson for making too much noise at the Orals because he would let me in. I tried to show Greg that I was freezing, but I don't think he really got what I was trying to tell him. Chitter, chitter, screech, screech. I thought he was gonna make me stay out there all night. So I ran around the house to see if the front door was unlocked. But it wasn't. And I kind of freaked out a little. Ding, ding dong, ding dong. The good news is that someone came to the door pretty quick, but the bad news is that it was Mr. Hapley. Mr. Hapley told us to get our stuff from the basement because we were gonna have to stay in Greg's room so he could keep an eye on us. Then Mrs. Hapley came into Greg's room and said she was disappointed in us for sneaking out, and that made me feel ashamed all over again. But I think Greg gets in trouble a lot because he didn't seem that ashamed. As soon as Mrs. Hapley went to bed, Greg said I was dumb for making all that noise at the Uruk's, and extra dumb for ringing the doorbell. I said I was sorry for saying "wee" on the trampoline, but the doorbell thing was all his fault. Then Greg wept me with his pillow, and I wept him back. But I guess we made too much noise, and that's why I had to see Mr. Hapley in his underwear for the second time in one night. Wept. Mr. Hapley told Greg he had to sleep in Manny's room, and all I could think was, who's the baby now? The next day, Mrs. Hapley woke up woke me up and said breakfast was ready downstairs. Greg was in the bathroom brushing his teeth, and he said he hoped I brought my own toothpaste because I wanted to use it. Because if I wanted to use his, I was gonna have to pay for it since it was his house. I told him I did have my own toothpaste, and then he said I was gonna have to pay for the water I used to brush my teeth. I said I wasn't gonna pay for the water because I was the guest and guests are special. Guests are supposed to get treated special, but not every guest. So he said if I wasn't gonna pay what I owed, I couldn't eat breakfast or any other meals either. I was like, yeah, right. And then he said I was using his electricity and he shut the lights off on me. When I got downstairs, I told Mrs. Epley about all the stuff Greg said upstairs, and she said I was right about guests being special. Then she let me pick which pancakes I wanted before Greg got to pick. After breakfast, Mrs. Appley said we had too much screen time the day before and that we had to figure out something to do until lunch. Greg was in a grumpy mood, so I decided to cheer him up with a knock-knock joke. But he wouldn't do the who's there part, no matter how many times I tried. Knock knock, knock knock, hey Greg, knock knock. I told Greg I was gonna go upstairs and tell his mom he wasn't saying who's there, and then I finally made him do it. Who's there? I said, what do elephants do at night? But Greg said you're not supposed to ask questions in that part of a knock-knock joke. And I said, yes, you are. Then he told me I was dumb. And I said I was going to tell on him for that. And Greg said, go right ahead. And so I did. So Mrs. Appley came down and told Greg he wasn't allowed to call me dumb or stupid or any other bad names either. But then when she left, Greg said he had a new nickname for me. At first I thought it sounded cool, but then I figured out what he meant. Hey, stoop. It means hey, stupid. I told Greg I was gonna tell on him again, but then Greg said that it was opposite day, and everything meant the opposite of what it was supposed to. You are smart. Well, I knew what he meant, so I went and told Mrs. Epley. But at first, she didn't get mad because she didn't know what it was opposite. I explained it to Mrs. Epley, and she made Greg apologize. But I think he might have been being opposite. I'm sorry. Mrs. Epley told us that sometimes friends get on each other's nerves. But we needed to figure things out since we had a whole day to go on our sleepover. She said maybe we should spend some time apart. And I thought that sounded like a great idea. So I hung out with Manny in his room for a while. Even though I was having fun with Manny, I missed my mom and dad, and I looked at their picture whenever I got the chance. Whimper. The next time I saw Greg was when we had lunch. Mrs. Hapley made peanut butter and jelly sandwiches, and she even remembered to cut the crust off mine. After we finished our sandwiches, she gave us chocolate chip cookies for dessert. She gave Greg one, but she gave me two. Because she said I was the guest and guests are special. I ate one of my cookies, but I made a shield around the other cookie with my arms so Greg couldn't get it. Sometimes, if I have something Greg wasn't once he will lick it off, so I won't want it anymore. That's what he did last Halloween when I got more candy than he did. Lick. But Greg said he was full and didn't even want my cookie. He said that while I was playing with Maddie, he was reading a book about magic and he wanted to show me a trick. I really like magic, so I said okay. First, Greg told me to put my fingers on the edge to the table, so we're close together like this. Then Greg took my glass of milk and put it on top of my fingers. I asked him what the magic part was gonna happen, and he said it was already happening because I couldn't move. Well, he was right, because if I did, the glass of milk would tip over and spill. And Mrs. Hapley gets mad when I spill stuff in his house. Mr. Hapley gets mad when I spill stuff in his house. But then Greg said he's the real magic part. Here's the real magic part. And he took my cookie and ate it up. Gobble gobble. After that, Greg went upstairs, but I was stuck at the kitchen table, and I was still there a half hour later when Mrs. Hapley came back to the kitchen. I told her what Greg did, and boy was she mad, but it wasn't because of the magic trick. She was mad that Greg took something that belonged to me without asking. Wait. Rolly could bite the cup and he drink and get up and left it and told Mrs. Hapley. I told her what Greg did. No. We went up to Greg's room, and then Mrs. Hapley told me I could pick out one of Greg's things to take home with me so we'd be even. Well, Greg had a bunch of cool toys that he never let me play with, so it was really hard to pick. But every time I got close to one of his favorites, he kind of let me know I shouldn't pick that one. Wait, Rolly, pick that one. Wait. Greg loves when he said toys. So Rolly should pick when Greg said I picked up an action figure. There was a knight with a missing arm, and Greg seemed okay with that. But as soon as Mrs. Hadley left the room, Greg said I could play with my lame action figure because he was gonna play with all his cool stuff by himself. Whoosh! Zoom! I think Greg showed me because he took his cookie. It's extra special cookie and it's really delicious. But Rolly can't eat this night. It kind of bugged me. And I wanted to bug Greg back. So I pretended I was having a total blast with my toy. Tra la 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 la, I'm having so much fun. Tra la 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 la. Well, it worked, and Greg said I had to hand it over his toy. I said no way, and he said he was just gonna wait for me to fall asleep, and he'd take it back himself. Wait, Mrs. Hadley said to take it, and Greg said no, and Rolly has to hand Greg his toy, but it's not his toys anymore. I told him I was gonna put the action figure down my underwear, so he couldn't get it, and he didn't like that idea. Then Greg said he'd trade me for the action figure, and I asked him what he'd give me for it. Greg said he gave me 99 cents for the night, and I said okay to that. But then Greg took a dirty sock out of his hamper and tried to get me to smell it. And I was like, what was that for? And Greg said, that was my first scent. Wait, this is unbelievable. It's not fair. And I wanted 99 cents, not 99 cents. But Greg said a deal's a deal. And then he tried to get me to smell another sock as my second scent. When I told Greg, I was gonna to tell on him again. He said he traded me his Lego dragon for my knight. And I said yes because that dragon is way better than a knight with no arm. But then, when I gave my knight, Greg, and I gave Greg my knight, he wouldn't give me the dragon because he said I should remember it was still opposite day. Well, that was the last straw for me, and I tried to grab the dragon from Greg, but it kind of slipped out of my hands and hit the floor and broke apart. I guess we were making a lot of noise because the next thing we knew, Greg's mom was back in the room. She said she was gonna have to separate us for the rest of the night, which were fine with me. Yeah, which were fine with me. Not me, Rolly. Mrs. Hapley said that we each had one half of the bedroom, and that we had to stay on our own side. So she picked me which side I wanted, and I picked the side with the bed, which made Greg mad. When Mrs. Hapley went back to her room, Greg said he was turning on an invisible force field between our two sides. Then he said if someone crossed over that they'd get zapped. Greg said he was fine with me having the bed because he could sleep on an air mattress, and plus all the fun stuff was on his side of the room. And when I reached over to Greg's side for my action figure, sure enough, I got zapped. I opened the drawer in the table next to Greg's bed to see if he had any comics I could read. Well, there weren't any comics, but one of Greg's old handheld video games was in there. So I played it, and Greg couldn't do anything because of the force field. Whee! Yeah! Biplop. But Greg said I could play video games by myself, like a nerd. Because he was having a wild party on his side of the room. And I wasn't invited. And I got kind of jealous because his party looked pretty fun. La la la, yeah, yeah, yeah. I said, well, I'm having a party on my side. And it was even more wild than his party. And I had really good music. Greg said, I couldn't even came up with an original idea. But I still think he was jealous of my party. Yeah, 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 woo, woo. Then Greg said the plug of my party speakers was on his side of the room, so he pulled it out to shut off my music. Yank! Greg got back to his party, and I tried to tell him to plug my speakers back in, but Greg couldn't hear me because the music at his party was too loud. Rolly, Greg's just messing with you, and you can cross over the line and get, and there isn't an invisible force field. But this time, Mr. Happy came into the room, and Greg didn't notice him standing in the doorway. I can't hear you, Mr. Happy said. He didn't want one more peep out of us. And then he left the room. We were both quiet for a long time. But then Greg tried to get me to laugh. And I almost did. Peep. Greg stopped because his dad is right standing over his back and his thumb. I was kind of glad we had to be quiet because I was getting pretty sleepy anyway. And I wanted to go to bed. I told Greg I needed to brush my teeth, and he said it's too bad because the force field was still on and I was trapped in my half of the room for the whole night. So I asked if he could just turn off the force field for a little while so I could brush my teeth. But he said once the force field is turned on, it stays on until the morning. And then Greg went to the bathroom to brush his teeth and came back to the room after he was done. Rolly, just go over and brush the teeth. You didn't get sad when you go through the invisible force field. Yeah, you didn't get sad. Minty. That's when I remembered I need to use the bathroom before I go to bed every night so I don't have any accidents. But Greg said I was just gonna have to hold it until the morning. I said I couldn't make it all the way till morning. And Greg said that wasn't his problem. I said if Greg didn't shut off the first field, I was gonna have to pee in Chewbacca mug on the table. Chihuahua mug on the table next to Greg's bed. Then he told me he had a special invisibility knife that could cut through the force field. Greg showed me how the knife worked by cutting a square in the fortress field right next to the table where the mug was. Sure. Then he reached through the hole and Greg grabbed the mug's neck. I asked Greg to cut a Rolly-sized hole in the force field so I could get through it to use the bathroom. But Greg said the knife had ran on invisible batteries, and they got used up when he made a hole, so I was out of luck. Then Greg started talking about all sorts of things that made me feel like I really needed to use the bathroom. Rainy day, hoses, skis. Finally, Greg got tired and he fell asleep. I thought about trying to sneak past him, but I was worried he was just faking it, and I was gonna get sad. After a while, I fell asleep too, but I woke up around 6 in the morning feeling like I was gonna burst. I didn't care about the first build anymore, but I was worried that if I used the bathroom, I might wake up Mr. Hapley. But I should just use the bathroom anyway, because Mr. Hapley was already up for the day. In the Wimpy Kid book, Greg said his dad always wake up at 6 p.m. and it's 6 p.m., 6 in the morning. And he wakes up 6 in the morning too. Luckily, Mr. Hapley didn't look up in time to see me in the window. And when he got to Greg's room, I was already back in bed. I fell back asleep where I wrote while and got up when Mr. Hapley said it was time for Mrs. Hapley said it was time for breakfast. After we ate, I went to get my night action figure from Greg's room, but I couldn't find the toy anywhere. Greg said he didn't know what happened to it, but Mrs. Hapley said he had to help me look. So the two of us searched Greg's room, but to be honest, he wasn't all that helpful. I guess Mrs. Hapley thought Greg was hiding the action figure from me because she said if he didn't hand me over in 2 minutes, that he was gonna be in big trouble. Greg said he needed to use the bathroom, but he kept looking for my action figure after he was done. But I noticed he had something in his hand when he went in there. Greg locked the bathroom door and Mrs. Hapley told him to come out right this instant. But then the toilet flushed and when Greg opened the door, there wasn't anything in his hand anymore. Mrs. Hapley made Greg give me 3 toys, and that this time I picked out ones that weren't broken. My mom said Mom and Dad came and got me just before lunch, and boy, was I glad to see them. P.S. If you wanted to know the answer to the Nook Nook joke, it's elephants watch television. What? It's television. Now, television. The Adventures of Greg and Raleigh. I'm pretty much up to date on Greg's life. So today I showed Greg what I wrote so far. I thought he would like it, but he was mad. Greg said this book was supposed to be about him and not about me. I told him it was hard to write about just him because most of the time we do stuff together. He said I need to go back through the book and take out all the stuff with me in it. I told him that would be dumb because then the book would only be like 1 page long. I said maybe we should change the title to The Adventures of Greg and Raleigh, and it could be our biography. Then I said since there's a lot of scary stuff in this book, we could make it into a spooky series where there's 2 pals solve mysteries. We could make a lot of money and we'd both be rich and famous. Greg said that was the stupidest idea he ever heard. He said this book is about his life, and if he wants to be, he can change the name of Greg's best friend to Rupert, and that he wouldn't owe me anything. Plus, he said he'd make Rupert really dumb and drooling all the time. Arl. Then Greg told me the book smelled funny. Anyway, and then I brought it up to my nose to snip it. He closed the book on my face. So I said, "Hey, what was that for?" And Greg said, that's what I got for dropping him in the puddle. Then he said he got me back when I least expected it. And I guess he was right about that. But I was pretty mad that I wrapped him with his own biography. Well, I guess Greg wasn't expecting that because he lost his balance and fell in a big puddle. Boy, I think he's mad at the second time. And where? Here. Yeah, here. Ploosh. And here. I think Greg will be super mad. Anyway, I am up in my room now, and I am hoping Greg's mom calls him home for bedtime soon because he already skipped dinner. I am glad all that stuff happened today because it gave me a whole new chapter in our biography. I'm sure we'll be pals again tomorrow, and we'll have a bunch of new adventures that I can put in there. I think I did. I don't think it could. That's this. Same, but instead of moon. And I'll bet if we go with my idea about the scary stuff, it'll sell 1 million copies. The Spooky Adventures of Greg plus Raleigh. But if Greg changes my name to Rupert, I just want to say for the record that he wet his pants at that first sleepover too. Okay, now back to this being me about me. Well, if Greg's not happy with his biography, then I can go back up to using this journal to write about myself. So now I'm officially the main character on this book again. And from now on, this thing is just gonna be all about me and my mom and my dad and I might mention Miss Back one more time if there's enough room. Speaking of my mom and dad, after my last fight with Greg, they came to my room to talk me about it. Greg, maybe it's time to find some new friends. But I don't really think I can't add any new friends because Greg takes up so much of my time. I knew me and Greg don't always get along, but Mrs. Hapley said, sometimes friends get on each other's nerves. Well, me and Greg got on each other's nerves a lot, so I guess that just proves that we are best friends. Smack. Okay guys, today was a Diary of an Awesome Friendly Kid by Jeff Kinney, Raleigh Jefferson's Journal. And this was the end. And see you in the next time. And please like and subscribe. Bye bye.